Hey everybody, it's May from Black Mountain Plans, and tonight I need to do my day 12 Bible reading in the book of Genesis for chapters 38 through 40. So if that seems interesting, just stay tuned. Okay, friends, so we all know I've been pretty busy. I have the study guide for Genesis coming out in less than 48 hours. The sticker bundle with all the images I've been using in Genesis comes out on the 18th, and the faith release comes out on the 17th. So when I was last on here, I thought everything was going to be going according to schedule, and then I got very, very ill. I'm feeling much better now, so let's get to it. Alright, so we ended up on, let me check my days here, according to the plan. We ended up on 37, the story, yeah, okay. Oh, that's the name of the video. I'm not doing that. Alright, so we ended up with Joseph and his brothers, who sold him into slavery in Egypt because he had interpreted his dreams to them and told them basically that one day he would be over them and they would be subservient to him. And they didn't like that. So we're going to start now. You would think we're going to continue with Judah, but instead, with Joseph, but instead we have the Judah and Tamar story, or Tamar, I believe is how you say it. So this is kind of interesting. When I first read this, I was like, wow. All right, so basically what happens is Judah is one of Joseph's brothers, okay? And he ends up getting married, and he has 3 sons. And it says his firstborn was, and her name was Tamar. Judah took a wife for his firstborn. Okay, so Judah's firstborn son, he marries to Tamar. And the Lord felt like was a wicked individual, so he put him to death. It doesn't say what his wicked crimes were or how he was put to death. It just says that the Lord felt he was wicked and he was put to death. It says Judah's firstborn was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. That's all we get. That's it. But according to pretty much their traditions in this time period, the second son, the next oldest brother of a deceased brother, would take over the responsibility of carrying on the lineage and the name of the brother who had passed away. And that goes next to Onan. So Onan decides that he knows any children between him and Tamar, since he's going to take over Ur's place since he had passed away, being put to death. He knew that they would not technically be considered his, they'd be considered Ur's, and he withheld his seed from Tamar so that she wouldn't be able to be, she wouldn't conceive. And the Lord was not happy with that. And he puts him to death as well. So Judah is really scared that his last son, Shelah, who's now supposed to take over and marry Tamar as well, he's afraid he's going to die too. So he basically says, wait until Shelah is old enough, and then you go back to your fathers and you wait. Just wait for him to grow up some, and then we'll let you get married. But it seems like, according with what Tamar is about to do, she pretty much figures out that's pretty much not going to happen. She's just not seeing that happening. Okay, so I wrote in here, Judah separates from his brothers and marries a Canaanite woman. He has 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Marries Tamar, but God sees as a wicked man and puts him to death. According to tradition, Onan, the second son, is obligated to marry Tamar to continue Ur's lineage. However, Onan withholds his seed to avoid Tamar having children with him, and God considers this act as wicked and puts Onan to death as well. Judah fears for his remaining son Shelah's life and delays him from marrying Tamar. So we find out that Judah's wife passes away, and in time he's comforted, and he decides to go up to where his shepherds are shearing the sheep. And Tamar finds out, and she gets all dressed up like a prostitute, and she goes outside of the city gates near where Judah is supposed to be going, and she's pretty much there just to trap Judah. Okay, so it says that, and when Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enim, which is on the main road to Timnah. And for when she saw that Shelah was grown up, she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought that she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside, and said, "Come, let me come to you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me, that you may come in to me?" He answered, "I will send you a young goat from my flock." And she said, "If you give me a pledge until you send it." He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. And then she arose and went away. And taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. Okay, so some time goes past, and basically Judah does send his who does he send? By his friend, and I can't even say his name, Adulamite, I think. He tells him, "Go give this goat to this prostitute because I promised it, and get back my stuff I gave her." And he goes and he looks and he can't find her. And of course, because we know that Tamar is actually not a prostitute, she was his, daughter-in-law, and she's done went back home. And Adulamite comes back and he's got the goat, and he says, "Man, I can't find her." And everybody in the town says they don't even know of her. Okay, so he's like, "Well, we did what we could, so let's not worry about it." So some time goes past. It says about 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality." And Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." Wow. Okay, so that's scary. Ooh, think about that for in today's times. And she was being brought out. She sent word to her father-in-law, "By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant." And she said, "Please identify whose these are, and the signet and the cord and the staff." And then Judah identified them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not know her again. So Judah recognizes that he should have, when Shelah came of age, he should have married him to Tamar, and he didn't. And she did what she felt she needed to. This is kind of like a really weird story. In time, when she gives birth, she has twins. She has 2 boys. So I wrote over here, Tamar decides to deceive Judah by just dressing as a prostitute and secures Judah's signet, cord, and staff until the promised goat is delivered to her. Judah lays with Tamar. When she becomes pregnant, Judah demands punishment. However, she reveals his cord, signet, and staff. This publicly exposes him as the father. He decides to acknowledge his mistake. So Judah spares Tamar's life, and she has twins whose names are Perez and Zerah, and they become part of Judah's lineage. Despite human actions and desires, this chapter underscores God's ultimate control over lineage and the fulfillment of his promises. So we know that God has been promising over and over and over to Abraham, to Jacob, to everyone, that he's going to prosper his line. He's going to have so much offspring that it would not be counted, with like sands of time. You just cannot count it. And by him not wanting to marry Shelah to Tamar, it's kind of like stopping her ability to be able to reproduce. So it's a very odd story in the Bible here, but basically that's the main message of the story, is despite human actions and desires, no one's gonna take control over how God fulfills his promises about the lineage from Abraham. So the next chapter we go back into Joseph, and I was really happy for that. So it says Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Okay, so Joseph, he's sold into slavery, and he ends up in this man's house, who's like captain of the guard, I believe it is. It's been a couple of days since I read it, guys. He was an officer of Pharaoh. Okay. And so Potiphar notices that no matter what's going on with Joseph, his God is there with him. And it says, even as a slave in Potiphar's house, Joseph thrives. The Lord's presence blesses Joseph, granting him success in all his endeavors. Potiphar recognizes this and entrusts Joseph with the oversight of his entire household. So for a Hebrew at that time to take over, you know, be like, I guess in today's times it would be kind of like a manservant. You know what I mean? The head butler. He's in charge of everything. He's like his assistant. He's controlling what they cook for the meals, how they do the things in the house, how they take care of his wealth. For that to be going on back in those times, a Hebrew for an Egyptian, it's very obvious that the Lord is with Joseph. And it's really endearing to see that an Egyptian officer can recognize that and knows that his God is very powerful. And so therefore, since his God is blessing him, by extension, maybe I will be blessed as well if I treat him well. So it says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. So you can imagine how this woman got scorned. She got really nasty. And she does have power over Joseph. Let's be honest. She's Potiphar's wife. So it's going to be her word against Joseph's. And there comes a time where she really tries to get Joseph to bed her. And it says, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, see, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I had lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. And she holds up the garment to prove, like, this is true, And it's like the old saying, how can you fight a lie? How can you defend yourself against a lie? So the notes that I took here is Potiphar's wife continuously asked Joseph to lie with her, but he refuses to betray his master and remains faithful. Angered by his rejection, Potiphar's wife decides to accuse Joseph of attempted assault. And when Potiphar finds out, he has him thrown into prison. Even in prison, though, even when he gets over here, the Lord continues, the Lord's continued presence, even in prison. The warden places Joseph in charge of other prisoners, and this demonstrates God's faithfulness and Joseph's unwavering character. So, it says over here in chapter 40, Joseph interprets two prisoners' dreams. So, he's in there, and he's in charge of the prisoners, as we found over here. The warden basically shows him the same attitude, like, your God is blessing you, he's with you, by extension maybe me as well. If I treat you good enough, he puts him in charge of prisoners, and he's treated pretty well in prison. So it says, sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And then one night, they both dreamed. Each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. And basically, Joseph's like, well, tell me what your dreams. And they did. So it says, so the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, there was a vine before me. and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into the Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly, when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit. So I guess it was like a house. I didn't realize it was like a house, the prison was. But I guess because they're considered higher up prisoners, you know what I mean? I guess it was better a situation for them. But he does say it was a pit. It's just hard to try to imagine, you know what I mean? So we know that the cupbearer, according to his dream, it seems like everything's going to go okay. So the baker's like, hey, you know, it says, when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the upmost basket there was all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, and lifted up their head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So the notes that I took on this chapter was Joseph interprets. Pharaoh's baker and cupbearer had offended him, so they were thrown into the same prison where Joseph is being held, and by him I mean the Pharaoh. So Joseph, entrusted with their care, observes their distress after they each have disturbing dreams on the same night. And then Joseph interprets the cupbearer's dream as a sign of his imminent release, whereas the baker's dream foreshadows his execution in 3 days. On Pharaoh's birthday, which was, I'm a big historian person. I like to watch especially Egyptian documentaries. It was a thing on a Pharaoh's birthday. You could literally ask him anything, depending on if it was in the old, middle, or new kingdoms. You could ask a pharaoh for a favor, and it was unheard of for him to deny your request. So a lot of people were pardoned on Pharaoh's birthday. And it says on Pharaoh's birthday, the cupbearer is reinstated and the baker is executed. Joseph pleased with the cupbearer to remember him and mention his case to the Pharaoh, but the cupbearer forgets about him upon his release. I mean, he's out. Why is he going to talk to Pharaoh about some Hebrew that's in prison? Obviously, this Hebrew did something wrong. That's just probably the way the cupbearer was thinking about it. Or maybe he was just too happy to be out. But you would think if you were so elated to be out, you would remember the person who, pretty much told you it was going to happen. So that was the end of chapter 40. And that is the end of day 12. And as you can see, I've already gotten on to chapter 41. I just have to write in chapter 42, and I can be back for another video. But the videos should start coming a lot quicker these days because everything has been worked out. I now know I need to transcribe my notes and take my images for the study guides for each of the books. I did figure out where I want to go with Psalms. And so I just wanted to come on here tonight and start this. By Friday, I should have day 16 up is what I'm hoping. So there might be 2 videos tomorrow and 2 videos on Friday. So until I see you in the next video, y'all have a great day. Bye.